Welcome to English Now. Today's session is a 20-minute shadowing practice designed for learners who already speak English well and want to refine pronunciation, rhythm, and fluency through a short, engaging story. Shadow this audio out loud from beginning to end. Stay with the flow and match the pacing as closely as you can. Before we begin, check the first pinned comment to download the ebook, Train Your Advanced English, Fluency in Practice. It will help you extend today's training and push your fluency even further. Let's begin. Early one morning, before the city was fully awake, Daniel stepped outside his apartment and noticed something unusual. The air felt heavier than normal, as if it were carrying a quiet message he couldn't yet understand. He paused on the sidewalk, listening to the distant rumble of traffic and the soft whistle of the wind between the buildings. Everything seemed ordinary, yet somehow different. Daniel adjusted the strap of his backpack and started walking toward the subway station. He had a long day ahead, full of meetings, deadlines, and conversations he wasn't looking forward to. But as he walked, he kept sensing that the atmosphere around him was shifting in subtle ways. He passed a small bakery on the corner. Warm bread had just come out of the oven, filling the air with a comforting smell. Daniel slowed down for a moment, letting the scent remind him of simpler days when he didn't feel constantly rushed. As he continued down the street, he heard a soft fluttering sound above him. He looked up and saw a single white feather drifting through the air, moving slowly, almost deliberately, as if it were guiding him somewhere. He reached out, but the feather slipped just beyond his fingertips and floated away. Daniel watched it disappear over the rooftops, feeling strangely awake, as if the city had whispered something only he could hear. Taking a deep breath, he stepped into the subway entrance and felt the cool air rise from below. Even in the dim corridor, the sensation of something unusual stayed with him. Daniel walked down the long staircase into the station, each step echoing softly in the quiet morning. He tapped his card at the turnstile and moved toward the platform, noticing how empty it was compared to his usual commute. A single bench stood near the wall, and a flickering overhead light cast a pale glow across the tiles. He stood near the edge of the platform and glanced at the tracks, but something made him stop. There was a faint humming sound, almost like a low vibration, coming from somewhere deeper in the tunnel. It wasn't the typical rumble of an approaching train. It was softer, more melodic, almost rhythmic. Daniel tilted his head, trying to make sense of it. For a moment, he wondered if it was just his mind playing tricks on him after so many stressful weeks. But the humming grew slightly louder, as if responding to his attention. The digital sign above the platform blinked, then froze. No train times. No updates. Just a blank screen with a faint glow. Daniel checked his watch. The train should have already arrived. He took a few steps back, leaning against the cold metal beam behind him. Across the platform, he noticed an older man sitting quietly on the bench, hands folded over a newspaper. The man wasn't reading. He was staring straight ahead, as if waiting for something only he could see. Daniel hesitated, then approached him slowly. "Excuse me," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the empty station. "Do you hear that sound?" The man turned his head with a calm, almost knowing expression. He nodded once. "It means the day is changing," the man said softly. "It happens when people finally start listening." Daniel felt a chill run through him. "What do you mean?" he asked. But the man simply gave a small smile and tapped the folded newspaper with his finger. "There are moments," the man continued, "when the world tries to speak. Most people walk past them. But if you pay attention, you notice the shift before it arrives." Daniel didn't know how to respond. He looked down the tunnel again, and the humming suddenly stopped, completely, instantly. The silence that replaced it was heavy, almost thick. The man stood up slowly, as if the silence itself had called him to move. He picked up his newspaper, tucked it under his arm, and said, "Your train is coming. But not the one you expect." Daniel's heartbeat quickened. Before he could ask anything else, the man turned and walked toward the exit, disappearing up the staircase without looking back. Daniel stared after him, confused and uneasy. He was alone again, until a sudden gust of wind pushed through the tunnel, cold and strong, as if pulled from somewhere far away. The lights along the track flickered in sequence, one by one, moving rapidly toward the platform. A deep rumble followed, not the usual metallic roar of a subway train, but something smoother, deeper, almost like a giant breath. Daniel stepped back as the tunnel filled with a soft glow, faint at first, then brighter. His instincts told him to run, but his curiosity held him frozen in place. A shape began to form in the light. Not a train. Not anything he recognized. Just a smooth, bright outline moving closer, slow and steady, as if giving him time to prepare. Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't know what was coming, or why he felt so certain that whatever was approaching was connected to the strange feeling he'd had since morning. The glow expanded, filling the entire platform with warm, silent light. Daniel shielded his eyes with his hand, squinting through the brightness, trying to make sense of the figure emerging within it. Something stepped forward, and the light pulsed, once sharply, as if acknowledging him. Daniel held his breath. The light slowly softened, enough for Daniel to make out a silhouette standing only a few steps away. It wasn't frightening, just unexpected, impossibly calm, as if whoever or whatever stood there had entered the station with complete permission from the world itself. As the glow faded further, Daniel saw that it was a woman. She looked to be in her 30s, wearing a long coat that seemed to shimmer slightly each time she moved. Her expression was steady, peaceful, as if she'd been expecting him. "Daniel," she said gently, her voice echoing through the empty platform in a way that felt both natural and impossible. He froze. She knew his name. He tried to speak, but no words came out. "You heard the signal this morning," she continued. "That means you're aware, more aware than most." Daniel finally forced himself to speak. What signal? I just heard humming. The woman nodded. That's how it begins. A vibration. A shift. A change in the air. Most people ignore it. She stepped closer, and Daniel's anxiety eased slightly, replaced by a strange sense of recognition, as if he'd seen her somewhere before, even though he knew he hadn't. The city is trying to tell you something, she said. And today, you're ready to listen. Daniel shook his head. I don't understand any of this. Who are you? The woman smiled softly. You'll understand soon. But for now, you need to follow me. Your path doesn't stay here. Daniel glanced back at the tunnel, expecting the light to still be there, but it had completely vanished. The station looked normal again. Empty, quiet, almost dull. He looked around nervously. My train is supposed to come soon, he said. It was the only normal thought he could hold on to. That train isn't for you today, the woman replied. Not anymore. Daniel hesitated, unsure whether to trust her. Where would I be going? He asked. To clarity, she said simply. Something has been calling you for a long time. You've been ignoring it, burying it under stress, noise, and routine. But today, the call was strong enough for you to notice. Daniel felt a knot tighten in his chest. He thought of the heaviness in the morning air, the drifting feather, the strange silence, the old man's words. The day is changing. What happens if I don't follow you? Daniel asked. The woman took a slow breath, as if choosing her words carefully. You'll return to your day. Your meetings, your deadlines, your obligations. But the feeling you had this morning, that sense that something is shifting, it won't go away. And eventually, the city will call you again. Only next time, it might not wait. Daniel looked down at his hands, realizing they were trembling. He didn't know whether it was fear or anticipation. A soft gust of air swept along the platform, warm this time, like sunlight. It circled around him gently, almost encouragingly. How do I know this is real? He asked quietly. He wasn't even sure if he was asking her or asking himself. The woman approached him until she stood just a few feet away. Then she held out her hand. When you take a step toward truth, she said, truth steps toward you. Daniel stared at her hand for a long moment. His heart pounded. He felt the weight of every ordinary day he'd lived pressing against this single decision. Finally, slowly, he reached out his hand. But just before he touched hers, a sudden, sharp sound cracked through the station, a metallic clang, ringing and echoing down the tunnel. The woman immediately turned her head. Her calm expression shifted into alertness, almost urgency. That wasn't supposed to happen, she whispered. Daniel stepped back. What was that? The lights along the tunnel flickered violently, one after another, like a wave of electricity glitching through the system. A deep rumble followed, not warm, not welcoming. This one felt wrong, heavy, almost angry. The woman moved quickly, placing herself slightly in front of him. Daniel, listen to me, she said sharply. You need to stay close. Something else woke up when you heard the signal. What does that mean? He asked, panic rising in his voice. She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed toward the far end of the platform. A shadow appeared, long, shifting, stretching far beyond the shape that cast it. It moved across the floor with a speed that didn't match its size, sliding along the tiles like liquid darkness. Daniel felt a cold shiver run through him. The woman raised her voice. "Stay behind me. Do not move." The shadow crept closer. The lights flickered again, and the air grew colder, as if everything around them had suddenly stopped breathing. Daniel swallowed hard, unable to look away from the moving darkness. The woman took a deep breath and said quietly, "It found us." The shadow stretched across the platform, pulling itself forward in slow, deliberate motions, as if tasting the air. Daniel felt the temperature drop even further, a cold that reached straight into his chest. The woman lifted her hand, and a faint shimmer appeared around her fingers, the same soft glow Daniel had seen when she first arrived. "Do not look directly at it," she said. Her voice was firm, controlled, but Daniel could hear the tension beneath it. The shadow paused as if aware it had been addressed. Then it shifted shape, narrowing, tightening, forming a long, thin line that pointed directly toward them. Daniel took a small step back. "What is it?" he whispered. "A remnant," she said. "Something that moves when the world changes but doesn't belong to the change itself." The shadow suddenly lunged forward, sliding across the tiles with impossible speed. Daniel flinched, but the woman raised her hand and a burst of soft light pushed outward, stopping the shadow just inches from her feet. It recoiled instantly, pulling itself back into a wider form. "Daniel," she said quietly, "when I tell you to move, you move. No hesitation." He nodded, barely able to breathe. The shadow rose upward, stretching along the wall until it reached the ceiling, twisting like smoke caught in a storm. Sparks flickered from the overhead lights as the darkness spread. The woman stepped forward, her glow intensifying. But the shadow reacted, compressing into a single ripple that shot across the ceiling, circling the platform like a predator preparing to strike. Daniel could feel the pressure in the air building, as if something invisible was pulling everything inward. The woman turned her head slightly. "Now, Daniel, move to the staircase." Slowly. He didn't question it. He stepped backward, then another step, forcing his legs to move even though fear tried to lock him in place. The shadow suddenly dove downward. The woman thrust her hand up, releasing a brilliant pulse of light that collided with the falling darkness. The impact echoed through the station like a deep drum. The shadow dissolved into thin strands that scattered across the platform, but only for a moment. They began pulling back together, rewriting themselves into a new shape. The woman looked at Daniel. Her voice was calm, controlled. "Go!" Daniel ran. His footsteps echoed sharply as he sprinted toward the stairs, his heart racing faster than his breath. Behind him, he heard another burst of light, then a sharp crack as the shadow struck back. He reached the first step and turned just slightly, just enough to see the woman stand firm, her entire body glowing as the shadow wrapped itself around the far end of the platform. She met his eyes from across the distance. "Keep going," she said. Daniel turned and climbed the stairs 2 at a time, the cold air chasing him upward. As he reached the top, another deep rumble rolled through the station, a sound that told him the fight below was far from over. He stepped into the morning light, breath shaking, heart pounding. The city looked the same, but he knew, absolutely knew, that nothing was the same anymore. If you enjoyed this practice, don't forget to leave a like.